Someone asked how I made my mushroom pants that I was wearing at Mushroom Fest this year, so I thought I'd make a little tutorial. As you can see, I'm laying out some jeans. I'm going to use these just to demonstrate how I made them. I didn't use a pattern. I used a method of making like a pseudo pattern that I found online. I'll link that somewhere, but I'll demonstrate it as well. So I just got a pair of jeans, and right there I'm lining up the center seam so that it's the same seam all on one side. I'll show that in a second. So the seam is all the way lined up on the side. You basically are going to end up tracing that onto a piece of paper to make your pattern. So now I've laid it down and I have that one seam all on one edge, and I'm going to make sure that the other side of that seam is also lined up right there. And you'll be drawing all of this onto a piece of paper. And if you want the exact same cut, you can trace it all the way down the leg. When I was making my mushroom pants, I didn't do that. I just made like a straight cut down the leg. But you'll want to do this for each panel, or at least for the front and back on one side, and then mirror it for your third and fourth panel of the pants. So now I've got the back side getting started. They're going to be a slightly different shape on the front and back, and that's fine and normal. I actually messed mine up and made 4 front panels because it was one-sided fabric, but I picked a loose-fitting pair of pants, so it worked out. It still fits. But if you want them to fit like the whatever pair of pants you're using, you'll want to make sure that you actually do the 4 separate pieces. Alright, so at this point you've done all of your sketching out, and we're on to the next step. Oh, I forgot to mention you should also add a seam allowance when you cut your fabric, so give it an extra 1/4 inch or so around what you drew. So next is after you have put together your actual pants pattern, like actually sewn it together, at the top the hem is going to be shirring, which is a way of making an elastic waistband without using like a band of elastic. So you're going to need elastic thread. You're going to want to put it on your free bobbin. I didn't realize I didn't have an empty one, so I had to swap it out real quick. You definitely want it on the bottom thread, the bobbin, and not on the top thread, because otherwise it will snap. I learned that the hard way. But you'll want to wrap it kind of snugly, but not stretching the thread all the way out. It's going to kind of fix the tension on its own. The machine itself will. So you want to wrap it around. And essentially what you're going to do is you're going to sew a waistband. It's kind of tedious to do the shirring for a waistband because you have to sew like 15 to 30 lines, but it does end up super comfortable. I also forgot to mention, for a shirred waistband, you're supposed to make the waistband about 1.5 times what your actual waist measurement is. So make sure you measure where your waistband is going to lay and include that in your homemade pattern. Mine ended up being, I measured it to 1.5 times my waistband, and it ended up being too big still, so I had to hem it in. So you might be able to get away with doing it just the normal waistband size, but it might feel a little bit tight. So now I've gone ahead and set up my machine. All of the string is in, and I'm going to use this scrap piece of fabric to show how to shirr. This is one of the few times in sewing where you will want your fabric face up. So you're going to set up with, again, your elastic on your bobbin and a regular thread on top. You want it to be a straight stitch, at least for the first time you're shirring. And you want to have pretty high tension. That's what's going to help to pull in and gather the fabric for you. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to like pull off the machine and go back and forth. But when you're actually shirring the hemline, you're just going to keep going in a straight line, and it'll loop around back to the front again. You're basically going to be making a giant, really short spiral on your pants. So right here, I'm showing where I have shirred it a little bit. I actually messed up this one, and the elastic was kind of stuck. So I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more examples just so that I can show what it should look like. But you can see that it's properly gathered in there. It started to bunch up like it will. You might have to play around with the tension on your machine depending on the fabric you're using and just to figure out what'll work for your thread. I'm using a flannel fabric and a heavy duty singer, and I'm on about 7 for tension. I'm not sure if it's measured the same on other machines, but that's what I use. So as you can see here, I've just done a back and forth shirring. Like I said, when you're doing your hemline, you're just going to keep doing a straight line. And as you sew, you're going to add on to the lines that you made previously. Here you can see that it's actually starting to stretch a little bit. It'll become much more pronounced the more rows you get in. It's designed so that you're basically making an elastic band into the fabric instead of buying a separate elastic band to sew on. But that's how you make the hemline, and you should end up with something like this. So I'm using a mushroom fabric that I got from Joann's. It's super comfy. I think flannel is a little bit thick to do the shirring on, but it still worked out. I have a nice hemline. These are super comfortable pants. I did add little square pockets, but it can't hold a lot of weight, I will say that, just because of the way that I made the hemline. But super comfortable, super flowy. You can really take any pair of pants that you like the fit of and make a pattern off of it and just make yourself a bunch more.